Hi again, this is Charlene O'Hanlon with Media Ops, which is DevOps.com, Container Journal, and Security Boulevard. And I'm here at DevOps World, Jenkins World 2018, San Francisco. And on my left is Matthew Barker, who is Solutions Architect at Twistlock. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on over and talking to me today.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
So let's talk Kubernetes. Twistlock is container security, as I understand, right?
That's right, container cloud security platform.
Awesome.
That's right.
Awesome. So on Container Journal, we're seeing just so much news around Kubernetes and around Kubernetes adoption, around just companies that have really embraced Kubernetes as a platform for containers and for microservices. So I'm really interested in finding out what you see as some of the larger Kubernetes trends, maybe as it relates to security, and then maybe just in general.
Yeah, in general, a couple of things that I'm seeing. One is that the major cloud services like AWS and Google are adding managed Kubernetes services. Mm-hmm. So you don't have to stand up your own cluster and manage that. Mm-hmm. Another trend I'm seeing is actually not just your deployments, your production deployments in Kubernetes, but using Kubernetes to leverage that technology as for your development pipeline.
Okay.
So you're actually building apps in pods in Kubernetes, doing all of the functional and unit testing in Kubernetes, etc. Leveraging, that scale. So if you're doing more builds, it just scales out automatically, rather than spinning up, Jenkins slaves, things like that.
Okay. All right. So I've heard, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but Kubernetes can be really difficult to implement, at least, without a lot of help. So am I wrong there, or do I have it right?
It can be difficult, and that's where the managed Kubernetes services help out. And there's other utilities like COPS that make that a bit easy. The really challenging part is actually to get a secure implementation of Kubernetes. That's where the Twistlock platform comes in. We have over 50 compliance checks for your Kubernetes deployment, and making sure that you're not exposing certs and keys, and that your deployments don't do things like running your containers as privileged or as root, which elevate attack surfaces, etc. So making sure that your Kubernetes infrastructure itself is secure, and then of course your applications that you're deploying in Kubernetes are secure as well. So they're both actually equally important.
So when we're talking about security, container security in general, do you find that having a Kubernetes environment is maybe inherently more secure than just a regular Docker environment, or are you seeing any maybe major differences that folks need to be aware of when they're thinking about standing up Kubernetes containers on Kubernetes versus any other platform?
Yeah, absolutely. So absolutely, because you have a very controlled environment, you can do things like only allow deployment, only be able to pull images into your Kubernetes cluster from like a secure registry, where you vetted the images, you made sure they don't have vulnerabilities or compliance issues. Kubernetes makes it real easy to do that.
Okay.
And then of course, the idea that you can lock down the endpoints to the internet to your cluster.
Okay.
You can stand up Nginx in Kubernetes, have it be highly scalable, expose endpoints, and have endpoint protection for that. So everything that is good about Kubernetes as far as deployment, you can leverage all of those great features to implement security too. But it's not automatic.
Right.
Out of the box, that security is not there. You actually have to add it, but it makes it pretty easy to do that.
So putting on your crystal ball, or looking through your crystal ball, Kubernetes, container security, maybe a year from now, 2 years from now, what are you seeing happening in the space?
So one of one of my pet peeves is we have a large inventory of images stored at GitHub and I'm sorry, GitHub would be the projects, but Docker Hub and other places like that. That inventory, almost 50% of it have high or critical vulnerabilities. They have compliance issues. So I see the evolution of the industry that our what you would call our supply chain, our store of images and components, the quality of those have to increase, and the security posture has to get a lot better. Otherwise, the automation that Kubernetes and DevOps enables, things like Jenkins and Kubernetes, is kind of lost, because if your supply chain is of poor quality, it doesn't matter how quickly you can leverage that supply chain to produce applications, they're going to be poor quality or high risk as well. So I see the trend is that we're going to kind of take a closer look at an inventory, particularly open source, and start building security into that supply chain.
That makes a lot of sense, especially when all the conversations that I'm having at this show regarding DevSecOps and the importance of security now, and the explosion of security in the DevOps process over the last year. It only makes sense that it's also that important for the container space. So,
Yeah,
interesting
absolutely.
stuff. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for taking a few minutes and talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here.